Mesa Prime has a reputation for turning entire rooms into target practice. Mine has been sitting on an old account for a long time, so today I wanted to find out whether I still remembered how to use her.
Without you.
After returning to Warframe, I promised myself I would take things slowly. No steel path yet, no ridiculous endurance run, and definitely no pretending that I understand every system again. The loadout looked powerful enough. Mesa Prime, Torid, Laetum, and her Regulators. The build was far from perfect though. Duration was low, several mods needed attention, and I was about to rely heavily on Shatter Shield. I started with a regular Exterminate mission. The plan was simple. Use the normal weapons first, get comfortable with the movement again, and save Peacemaker until the mission began pushing back. That plan lasted for roughly one room. Torid was deleting groups before I could properly aim, and the muscle memory started returning much faster than I expected. Mesa feels different from Neja. There is less freedom to ignore what is happening around you. If Shatter Shield expires at the wrong moment, a comfortable run can suddenly become much less comfortable. Then I pressed 4 and remembered exactly why people love this Warframe. Peacemaker does not feel like a normal ability. It feels like the game briefly gives you permission to remove everything visible on the screen.
Stay focused. There's a heavy unit approaching.
The first mission was not supposed to be difficult. It was a warm-up, but it showed me two important things. The damage was still there, and I was recasting my defensive abilities much too late. I tried rotating between Torid, Laetum, and the Regulators instead of holding one button for the entire mission. It was not always efficient, but it made the build feel like a complete loadout rather than one extremely powerful ability.
Moderate clone rot. Initiating reclamation.
Some of the travel time was less exciting, so here is the faster version. Run, shoot, forget where the objective is, turn around, and act like that was always the plan.
Find extraction.
By the final rooms, Mesa was already becoming comfortable again. I was still wasting energy and activating Peacemaker with almost no enemies nearby, but at least the hesitation was disappearing. The first test ended without any real danger. That was expected. The next mission would have more objectives, tougher enemies, and enough visual chaos to expose every bad habit I had just recovered.
Another job.
The Zariman was the logical second stop. I wanted something above the regular star chart without jumping directly into Steel Path, and this place is still one of the best environments for testing a general-purpose loadout.
At least I can still listen to her voice. Remind them who.
Almost immediately, the pace changed. Enemies were spread across larger rooms, targets were not always directly in front of me, and simply spinning the camera with Peacemaker was no longer the answer to everything.
These Corpus ain't here to trade. They're looking to steal from us. Give them hell.
Torid handled groups, Laetum gave me a reliable option for tougher targets, and Mesa cleaned up whatever survived. On paper, that combination sounds excessive. In practice, I still found ways to make it look complicated. This is where the low duration became noticeable. Shatter Shield and Shooting Gallery needed constant attention, and every missed refresh created a small window where Mesa was much more fragile than she appeared. I could rebuild her before every mission and copy the current meta exactly, but that would miss the point. I want this series to show the account improving naturally, one problem at a time. For now, the old setup was doing its job. It was not elegant, but enemies were disappearing, energy remained manageable, and I was beginning to pay attention to the ability timers instead of reacting after they expired. The best part of Mesa is the rhythm. Move into a room, refresh the defenses, find a good angle, activate Peacemaker, and leave before the animation has finished explaining what happened. The Zariman test ended cleanly. At this point, the damage was no longer the question. The real test was whether I could keep the build running for longer than a few minutes without becoming careless. So the final stop was a normal Void survival. 10 minutes, solo with no Steel Path modifiers. It was not meant to be the ultimate challenge, it was meant to establish a baseline for the next episode.
Keep the enemy busy while a fellow Tenno operative raids the ship for supplies. Ready? Trigger the alarm.
The opening minutes were calm. I used Torid and Laetum, watched the life support, and tried not to turn the mission into another Peacemaker demonstration immediately. That restraint did not last. Once the enemies started arriving in larger groups, Mesa took over and the screen became a mixture of golden muzzle flashes, damage numbers, and targets vanishing before I properly identified them. There is something extremely satisfying about the way Peacemaker accelerates. The targeting circle becomes smaller, the fire becomes faster, and for a few seconds, the entire room feels synchronized with the ability.
I've delivered a life support capsule to the area. Activating it will buy you more time.
The problem is that survival includes a lot of running between those moments. Let us compress this part.
That's a bypass.
At higher speed, my strategy looks surprisingly deliberate. Follow the enemies, collect life support, refresh the abilities, and absolutely do not mention every doorway I ran through twice.
Another life support capsule is now available.
Back at normal speed, I began using Peacemaker more selectively. Instead of draining the energy bar in an empty room, I waited for a proper group and tried to end each activation quickly.
The raid is off to a successful start. When you are ready, go to
This was the
extraction.
first real improvement during the session. The build itself had not changed, but the way I was playing it had. Mesa started feeling less like an emergency button and more like a frame I could control. Another quiet stretch, another quick montage. The life support remained stable, the enemies were not threatening enough to force a retreat, and the mission was settling into the exact rhythm I wanted to test.
Use the keys, but they are mere trespassers. Only I, Thor, know the true power of the word. This death is temporary. My existence is forever. I cannot be destroyed. It is time. I will teach these trespassers the redemptive power of my Yanis keys. They will learn its simple truth.
By this point, I knew the regular mission was already won. The remaining question was whether I would make a careless mistake before the timer reached 10 minutes. The answer was almost yes. A few late ability refreshes reminded me that Mesa's damage can hide weak defensive habits. Everything looks safe until the moment Shatter Shield is no longer active. Still, this was exactly the kind of progression I wanted. Not an artificial struggle against easy enemies, and not an immediate jump into endgame content, but a genuine attempt to understand the loadout again. Torid remained the easiest tool for clearing groups while moving. Laetum was dependable, but the Regulators were clearly the reason to keep developing this frame. They were powerful even before fixing the build. As the timer approached the end, I stopped conserving energy. This was the last room. The life support was comfortable, and there was no reason to leave any ammunition in Mesa's imaginary cylinders. "10 minutes was enough for today. The regular star chart, the Zariman, and a normal survival all went smoothly. More importantly, the gameplay improved between the first room and the final one. Mesa passed the baseline test, but the build did not escape inspection. Duration needs work. Some mods are doing very little, and Steel Path will punish those weaknesses much more aggressively. The next step is to rebuild her properly, test the improved setup, and then take this exact loadout into Steel Path. That should tell us whether the account is genuinely ready for endgame again. For now, I am calling this a successful return for Mesa Prime. If you have a change you would make to the build, leave it below. I will compare the suggestions before the Steel Path run. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Kalimos, no. Get back here. I need that.